I really have this strong feeling that Texas representatives aren't representing Texans.
Going, gone. Democratic state lawmakers fly to D.C., all part of a plan to derail voting legislation being pushed by Republicans during this special session. We've got the latest.
It's kind of the mesh that holds all the warfighting capability together.
Plus, ready, aim, fire. Tonight we find out how Texas A&M is helping the country's defense system. And crime is increasing from coast to coast. We're finding out what the plan is to curb all that gun violence. Texas state Democrats are in D.C. tonight, so why are they over 1,500 miles away from Austin during the special session? Thanks for being with us at 10. I'm Todd Unger. The move could block voting on a voting rights bill by denying Republicans the quorum needed to pass any new legislation. At least 51 Democrats need to leave for their plan to work. More than 50 have left. No return date is set. The House is set to reconvene Tuesday morning, but without the Democrats there won't be enough members to officially conduct any business. Some supporters are encouraged, while Governor Abbott says the move hurts Texas.
The Texas Democrats' decision to break a quorum in the Texas legislature and to abandon the Texas state capitol, that inflicts harm on the very Texans who elected them to serve.
I mean, we've been doing everything possible in our toolkit to show up, be heard, voice our concerns, and stuff is still rolling through. Like, thank you for showing up, but we're going to go ahead and vote this anyway. You know, so this is really necessary now. I mean, obviously we're not being heard, so something drastic has to be made.
Now, even if Democratic lawmakers stay out of state for the next few weeks, and it looks like they will, Governor Abbott can continue to call 30-day special sessions. He could also add the voting bill to the agenda of another session later in the year. The legislature is already set to reconvene in the fall to redraw the state's political districts. So what are some of the things included in this voting legislation? Both chambers' bills include a ban on drive-through voting, new regulations for early voting hours, and a ban on 24-hour voting. The bills would also ban the distribution of mail-in ballot applications. New ID requirements for voting by mail and more poll watching protections would also be included. AG Ken Paxton will not block users from his personal Twitter account any longer. A lawsuit says Paxton unconstitutionally blocked users for criticizing him and his policies. He has now agreed to quit blocking users to end that lawsuit. One of the people hoping to take Paxton's job is former state Supreme Court Justice Eva Guzman. Her campaign announcing it has raised more than $1 million in its first 10 days. Paxton says his campaign raised over $1.8 million in that same time. Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush reported $2.26 million during the 10 days. Military officials and defense industry experts making a trip to Aggieland this week for a major symposium. Tonight, KRHD News reporter Hannah King is taking us inside.
Held at the Texas A&M Hotel and Conference Center, the symposium was presented by the National Defense Industrial Association, an organization educating attendees about national security issues.
It's kind of the mesh that holds all the warfighting capability together, and how we do it in the future and move information is going to be critical. So the objective is to bring industry together with government speakers and academia from Texas A&M and other universities to talk about the solutions in JADC2.
Leading efforts alongside NDIA to bring the conference to the A&M campus, Stephen Cambone says the conference is about protecting the country.
The idea is that the U.S. Armed Forces are going to have to be able to fight in the air, in space, on the ground, and at sea, and in cyberspace, simultaneously across the globe. So how do you command and control those forces in a way that allow them to accomplish their mission and succeed in protecting the country?
Leaders at the conference say these meetings are critical because this is where the community interested in national security comes together to talk about the future.
So we're listening to concepts, we're looking at different technologies, and then really listening to what the services have to say to their academic partners and with their industry partners as well.
Just to name a few, government attendees, aerospace and defense executives, and academia were among those at the conference. The purpose is to help participants talk to one another about how to make progress. Reporting from Texas A&M, Hannah King, KRHD News.
Protests against the Cuban government start the news feed. President Biden says today that he supports the Cuban people's call for, quote, freedom and relief. It is very rare to see this kind of unrest in Cuba. And the U.S. has sent a delegation to Haiti to meet with the country's acting prime minister. Haiti's president assassinated this month. The delegation will look at Haiti's security and offer support. The top U.S. commander in Afghanistan has relinquished his post. General Scott Miller handing over command today to a Marine general who will be in the United States. This is a step closer for the United States ending its military presence in the country. The Taliban has been gaining ground in Afghanistan. Dog rabies has been considered eliminated in the United States since 2007, and now the CDC is trying to maintain that status by temporarily banning dog imports from 113 high-risk countries starting on Wednesday.
Hi, pretty boy. Welcome to the U.S.
From 2015 to 2019, only 4 dogs coming from other countries have tested positive for rabies. But the CDC says in 2020 there was an increase in irregular rabies vaccination paperwork. More dogs have also been getting sick while they wait to get into the United States with flight schedules reduced. But now soldiers who bonded with dogs overseas may not be able to bring their new friends home.
Our main countries that we rescue from are Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. Anywhere that our deployed military are, we will help them get their battle buddy home. And all the countries I just mentioned, unfortunately, are on the ban list.
The puppy rescue mission helps bring dogs like Stubbs to the United States. He made it just in before the ban. His new home will be in North Carolina after a soldier stationed in Syria bonded with him. The puppy rescue mission is worried that this ban will force them to turn soldiers away for the first time.
We're getting a lot of distraught and fearful emails. Are my dogs going to be able to get home? What can we do? Who can we reach out to? So they're grasping at strings right now. You know, they're afraid that they're going to have to leave their dogs behind.
The CDC is offering a waiver for U.S. diplomatic and military families, but the application process takes at least 6 weeks, and some of the required testing can take 2 to 3 months. Now, the CDC says the ban will last at least a year. The pandemic has given many Americans a break from loan payments, but now they're resuming, and it could drive people even further into debt. Next in our lineup, what experts say can help you avoid that payday loan trap.
More than 100 people are dead after a weekend of violence across the entire country. After the break, we see what the president's plan is to curb gun violence and what might be behind the dramatic rise. Hundreds of shootings across the country, killing at least 125 people over the weekend. According to the Gun Violence Archive, more than 360 shootings occurred between Friday morning and this morning. Among them, a 13-year-old teen killed in New York City. A police officer was also killed near Shreveport while responding to a domestic disturbance call. Meanwhile, a new study suggesting that the rise in gun violence is not connected to increased gun sales. The study was done by the Violence Prevention Research Program at the University of California, Davis. Researchers say most people who have bought guns from the start of the pandemic until now were already gun owners. So what's the reason behind the violence? The study suggests job loss, civil unrest, and closures of some community organizations could be possible factors. President Joe Biden says he has a 4-part plan to help curb gun violence across the country. First, hold gun dealers who break the law accountable. Next, support law enforcement with funding from the American Rescue Plan. Third, invest in community violence intervention programs. And lastly, fund mental health, substance abuse, and job training programs. The first payments in the Biden administration's enhanced child tax credits are expected to start this week. Here's how that program actually works. Heads of household will get up to $3,600 for each child up to 6 years old and $3,000 for each 6 to 17-year-old. Half of that credit can be claimed when filing income taxes this year. The other half will be paid in monthly installments from now through the end of the year. The amount of credit goes down for people earning over $112,000 or households making more than $150,000. Now let's go ahead and check in with Chief Meteorologist Matt Hines.
And tonight we are looking at some clearing conditions from earlier today where we saw showers and thunderstorms across the area. And currently mostly clear, 75 degrees. Not feeling too bad out there. It is a bit muggy though. Dew point is 70 and we are looking at a south wind at 3 miles per hour across the area. And as we take a look at rain totals, the highest totals were up in Robertson County where we saw some pretty high totals up here getting up into the 4 to 5 inch range, especially up near Bremond. That extended over just to the south of Centerville, and we did see some decent rains around Bryan College Station as well. But that has all come to an end as clouds and radar are showing that things are pretty quiet across our region, and it's probably going to be a little more on the quiet side over the next couple of days here. So let's take a look at our future track. Things are quiet now going into 7 o'clock in the morning. We will have some low clouds start to develop, and we may see some patchy fog, especially areas that saw some of the heavier rain. Then as we get into the afternoon, an isolated storm or two can't be ruled out. And I think that's going to be the case here, not only Tuesday, but going into Wednesday. Low clouds in the morning, partly cloudy skies in the afternoon, isolated thunderstorms will be expected. So about a 20% chance over the next several afternoons around here. And looking at lows tonight, temperatures will be falling into the low to mid 70s on us. And tomorrow, highs getting up into the lower 90s. Of course, it'll feel about 5 to 6 degrees warmer when you factor in that humidity. And looking at your 10-day forecast, we will have those temperatures hanging out into the lower 90s. And we will have that isolated storm threat continuing at about 20% Tuesday, Wednesday into Thursday. Going into the weekend may come down a bit. Highs will be into the middle 90s here, around 93 to 94 degrees. Then we may have another chance for some scattered showers and thunderstorms as we move into next week, and temperatures will be into the low to mid 90s. So notice no 100s in the forecast.
Stimulus payments and other expanded benefits have helped many low-income earners avoid turning to expensive loans to cover regular bills.
We're seeing that as the economy is working to improve itself, that more people are contacting us that they're getting stuck by these loans again, actually.
Sarah Nelson-Pallmeyer is the executive director of the nonprofit Exodus Lending. Helps Minnesota residents who fall into the payday loan lending cycle. This nonprofit did provide us the pictures you see here. Exodus will pay off the loan, then let the borrower make smaller fee-free payments over the course of a year or so. Now, she says the average borrower is a woman of color in her 40s who is just trying to make ends meet.
Let's put it this way, she said, Sarah, 2 and 2 do not make 5. My expenses every month are 5, and my income is 2 and 2, which is 4. And I struggle with that because I have basic expenses. And she said, I'm not talking about going to Starbucks every day. I'm not talking about getting a big screen TV or a big fancy car. I'm talking about putting food on the table and gas in the car and paying my rent.
Payday loans often charge fees based on the amount borrowed. A couple $100 can cost about $30 in fees. Now, when the loan's due, if the borrower can't pay the full amount, they end up just paying the fee and rolling it into another loan with new fees. In Minnesota, the average borrower typically takes out 7 loans before they can repay just the original amount. That is according to Exodus. Now, Exodus gets money to lend from investors and donors. Researchers say the rise in gun violence is not connected to the spike in gun sales that we've been seeing. This is according to a study from the Violence Prevention Research Program at the University of California, Davis. They say that most people who have purchased guns from the start of the pandemic until now were already gun owners. Instead, the study says that we should be looking at job loss, civil unrest, and closure of community organizations and schools as reasons behind the rise in gun violence. Now, the rise in ransomware attacks directed at U.S. companies is creating a demand for a new service from cybersecurity experts. Ransomware negotiators are helping companies reduce the cost of an attack and prevent future ones from happening.
This concept of let's make paying the ransom illegal. That's not fixing the problem. That's basically doing what happened to drugs in the United States. When you make something illegal, all it does is increase supply and demand and drive up the price. So all you're going to see is the ransom go up. We just need to step back and say, we got to do the work.
Now, as of right now, ransomware attacks are expected to cost organizations $20 billion this year alone. The early child tax credit payments should start hitting bank accounts this week. The monthly payments of $250 or $300, depending on the age of the child, start on Thursday. Now, the payments will continue through the end of the year. The IRS is automatically setting the payments based on 2019 and 2020 tax returns or to those who use the non-filers tool to register. It's designed to help the lowest income families with children. Israel is now offering a COVID-19 booster shot. This story tops the news feed. It is the first country to offer a booster. It's a third dose shot of the Pfizer vaccine that's for people with weakened immune systems. Israel is also dealing with a Delta variant surge right now. And as cases rise in the United States, we could look to Israel's numbers as foreshadowing of what the U.S. will be seeing in the coming months. In Israel, 90% of new cases are the Delta variant, but the death rate does appear to be less than previous surges in the pandemic. As society reopens, it appears there is less momentum to pay essential workers hazard pay. The Associated Press says only about a third of states used federal relief money to reward workers who went to their jobs during the pandemic. The federal government did broaden the ability of state and local governments to use that relief money to pay workers. A commercial airplane can burn a few gallons of fuel per mile. That is a lot compared to, for example, what your car burns on the way to work. Chloe Nordquist shows us a group of scientists looking at how they can make fuel more sustainable, efficient, and cost-effective.
It's very hard to bring these huge engines to run on other things when they carry that much weight.
Fuel is a big polluter of the environment, and the aviation industry uses a lot of it.
As modern societies, we're particularly good at producing trash.
Port of Seattle Commission President Fred Fellowman says they are working on getting away from petroleum-based fuel products in pursuit of fuels made with feedstock or grease and waste oils. The port's goal is to power every flight in and out of here with at least 10% blend of sustainable aviation fuel by 2028.
The airlines see the writing on the walls. If they want to be able to continue to fly in this ever increasingly warmer planet, they're going to have to get to this new fuel source.
Inside this lab, scientists and engineers have been working to solve multiple problems at once by turning recycled plastics into fuel.
In this process, we break with the plastic to smaller molecules.
The process can convert 90% of plastic to jet fuel components or other hydrocarbon products in just an hour with the help of heat, a solvent, and a catalyst.
We consider as a waste, right? But from the other perspective, it actually is an energy source or chemical source. It can be used as a raw materials, and then we can convert those raw materials to value-added products.
However, Hongfei Lin says not all plastic is the same, and some are better than others.
The plastic that we used to convert them to the jet fuel is this plastic. It's called high density with polyethylene.
The final product looks just like this and could be used as part of a fuel mixture.
Your carbon molecules it kind of have a long chain, like carbon. They stitch it together and becomes a long chain with a molecule. And the plastic is very long chain. Right? And for the jet fuel, it actually is a medium chain with the hydrocarbons.
This is the idea of chemical recycling.
Instead of breaking them and melting them, making plastic, well, we clean the plastic and then we break down the molecule to remake new polymers. So this is called like chemical recycling instead of mechanical recycling.
Sustainability expert Anik Ansil says when it comes to the idea of chemical recycling plastic, the big challenge currently is efficiency.
Instead of recycling them, if we can break down the molecules and go back and make high quality polymer again, instead of trying to downcycle the plastic into other products.
While plastics are being given new life, this process still has one caveat. Plastic is originally made from fossil fuel, meaning when it's converted, it's not considered a low-carbon fuel. But Hong Fei says that could change if plastics are made differently.
It can make with plastics from biomass, which is renewable.
And this fuel could still provide a cheaper choice.
So far, it will reduce the cost.
As alternative, more sustainable fuel options become more common, airports and airlines are ready to embrace the change.
We've been working at this for over a decade, and we are now at the verge of really being able to get to the next step and having our ability to have fuel in the pipeline, into the tanks.
I'm Chloe Nordquist reporting.
Chloe, thank you. And finally in our lineup, tipping for takeout can be a little unclear since you don't get the same service as you would at a sit-down restaurant. We're taking a look at just how much you should be leaving. A lot of us have relied on takeout or delivery during the pandemic, but our tipping habits haven't necessarily kept up, even with the difficult year the restaurant industry has had.
We found that more than 4 in 10 people said that they're going to support local businesses more and they're going to tip better. That sounds great. The thing is, though, last year, even more people told us that. And we've done this tipping survey many years running now, and we really haven't seen the overall numbers budge much at all.
A new survey on tipping out today from creditcards.com finds only 17% of people who pick up takeout always tip. For food delivery, a little over half of people are tipping all the time. It can be unclear just how much you should be tipping in these cases because you're not receiving the same service as a sit-down restaurant.
For takeout, I don't think you always have to tip. I think this is one where if the restaurant is primarily a takeout business, there's maybe not as much of an expectation. But if it's more of a sit-down restaurant that just happens to be offering takeout, that's a time when it might be nice to tip something like 10% to show appreciation for the staff, but also to acknowledge that they put the work in and they probably juggled this among other things.
The survey found on average among the people tipping when they're picking up food, they're leaving 15%. It's 17% for food delivery and 20% at a sit-down restaurant.
Unfortunately, if you're not tipping well, you're not really sticking it to the business. You're actually hurting that hardworking person who really relies on these tips to get by. So I think that, this gets very confusing and a lot of people kind of get this wrapped up into other issues. But at the end of the day, I think if you can afford to, it's nice to tip a little bit better because these people work hard. They often don't get paid that much and they've had a tough year.
It is summer vacation across most of the country. Libraries and schools are sitting empty. But as we move into the fall, testing for COVID-19 is starting to ramp up again. I'm Chris Conti, and tomorrow we'll show you why that's so important in keeping schools open this fall.
Jimmy Kimmel's up next on this Monday. Good Morning Texas on there tomorrow at 5 a.m. Thanks for being with us.